Although I'm pretty decent at programming, my ability to draw is really limited. I can do a couple things like draw stick figures or smiley faces, but anything more advanced really takes me a lot of time, and I can never really achieve anything that's worth sharing. So I kind of thought to myself that instead of investing a ton of time getting good at making art, maybe what I could do is use my programming skills to build a robot to draw for me. And before I dive into the story, I definitely recommend that you click on that subscribe button because I'm going to have videos like this in the future. And then also give me a thumbs up if you like this video because it helps my channel grow. So at this point of the project, there's really two main parts of solving this problem. The first part is how do I actually figure out how to get a path from an image, right? So you have an image and you need to get some type of XY path that makes up the outline of that image. So the first thing I came across was this image outline package, and this happens to work pretty good, but the issue is that you don't get the internal details of an image. So since that last package wasn't providing good results, I started to think about the image processing research I did back in college and maybe how I can apply some of those techniques to solve this problem. So the first thing that came to mind was maybe doing some type of edge detection. So I could use like a Sobel filter or any of these other filters to basically figure out the edges of an image. And then I thought I could maybe do some type of breadth first search algorithm to traverse the pixels to figure out a good path. But before I went down that path, which seems pretty complex, I decided to keep on looking for different node packages. Through my research, I came across something called potrace, which happens to be an image processing library where you can take images and kind of trace them out. So kind of something like this, where you give it an original image and it'll give you an output SVG. So after reading through this documentation a little bit, I started to realize that maybe I can utilize the internal path of an SVG and command robotjs to kind of draw to the screen. So if we look over at what an SVG is made up of, typically it has a path element, and inside that path element you have a data property which has commands in it. So in this case, this is saying move to mouse location 2020 and Y location of 12, followed by a Bezier curve of this start location, a command amount, and then a endpoint. So I figured if I could take this data and kind of process it, I could maybe command a robot to draw to the screen. I needed to solve the second part of the problem, which is how do I write a script to command my computer to kind of move my mouse around the screen and click on things. So with that being said, I remember there's a package called robotjs which you can use to basically move a mouse around the screen. You can also do keyboard events and stuff like that to type onto your computer and also do mouse clicks, etc. So I decided to use this package in combination with the last package to figure out the path I need to take to basically move my mouse and draw this Terran Marine. So after doing all my research, I figured out that I could probably start building out a prototype to make sure that all my assumptions can actually be used to make something cool. So I went about creating a node project and I imported the potrace library, and I simply called the posterize method on the potrace object and send it that image of the Terran Marine. At that point, you have a callback function which is going to give you back an SVG, and then I need to do some further processing on that. So because the posterize method returns us an SVG XML object, I need to bring in yet another library called Cheerio so I can parse the SVG and loop through all the path elements that are created. So for anyone out there who doesn't know what Cheerio is, it's a great package to just kind of loop through XML or HTML to be able to do some type of like jQuery manipulation to fetch DOM elements by name, by class, by properties, etc. Definitely check it out if you want to do any type of web crawling. So the next part of the implementation, basically for every path element that I find in the SVG data, I'm just looping through them and finding the D data property. And inside that data property, it has a list of different commands we can use. So now at this point, I needed to take that data property from the path inside the SVG and figure out the commands that I can run to basically emulate my mouse moving on the screen. So luckily there's a package out there called SVG path data, and you can pass it the D property data here and it'll kind of return you a list of different commands that you can use to drive robotjs. So the last part is I actually need to tell robotjs how to move the mouse around the screen. So what I did next is basically tell it for every command that you find, basically move the mouse to that XY location with some offset of course so that it can draw in the correct canvas location, and then go ahead and press the mouse down. Next, I loop through all the commands in the SVG and I check the type. So if the command type was moved to, I simply just lift the mouse up, I move the mouse to that location, and then I press the mouse down. Else, if the command type was curved to, I move the mouse to that location, and then I run the commands through a quadratic formula, which was another function that I found called adaptive quadratic curve. And that will basically give you a list of points that you could follow to draw out a curve on the screen. So after getting the list of curves, I basically drag my mouse on the screen across all those points, and that should kind of draw out the outline of the Space Marine. And then finally, I check if it's a line to command. I just simply move the mouse to that XY location as well. And at the end of doing all these commands, I move the mouse up, because you don't want the mouse being dragged around your canvas when it's trying to move to different mouse tool locations. So at that point, you can basically run this script, but before you run it, you need to make sure you switch screens so that the mouse can start drawing on GIMP. This is why I have a 2-second timeout before it actually starts using my mouse cursor. So I can basically run this script and move over to GIMP, but before I do that, I want to make sure that I'm selected with the right tools. So in GIMP, you can either select the pencil or maybe even the paintbrush tool, depending on what you want to do. You could change the actual paintbrush to be different designs if you're that of interest, but I decided to keep with the pencil tool and make sure that the size of the pencil is around 2 or 1, and also give it a really cool color. So let's just go ahead and run the script and move over to the screen and just let my mouse do its thing. So although the Space Marine from Starcraft 2 is an awesome looking character, let's see if we can find like a Hydralisk or maybe some type of Zerg character from Starcraft as well. So unfortunately my bot works best on black and white images that are already kind of drawn by hand. So I kind of have to go and find how people did some other stuff in Starcraft and kind of emulate my computer. So this Hydralisk looks pretty sick and it's a good resolution I think for my drawing. So let's just go ahead and try to grab this and see how it works. Alright, so now that I saved that image to my project folder, I can simply go to my script and change it to hydra.jpg, which is this image here, and hopefully it'll run the same way as it did with the Space Marine. But before we start doing that, let's change the color to something more interesting like red or purple because they're Zerg. Make a new layer and kind of clear out that old one, and let's just go ahead and save this file and see how it works. Alright, doesn't that look pretty awesome? That is a nice looking Hydralisk. Now, unfortunately, sometimes if you keep your pencil size a little bit too large, the fine detail kind of gets blurred away. So I think my pixel size of 2 right here was maybe too big, and I think maybe using a 1 might have resulted in a better drawing output. But I still think this looks pretty nice, and it's really cool to see a computer basically draw this by hand for us automatically from an image. Alright folks, so remember, if you're new to this channel, be sure to click that subscribe button because I'm gonna have videos like this in the future. If you are new to programming and you want to learn, I'll have a lot of tips and tricks for you all to learn. Secondly, be sure to give me a like because it really helps my channel grow. And finally, if you want to see me do this with a different image of your particular choosing, let me know and I could do that as well. Or if you have ideas of how I can expand upon this automated bot, I'd be really interested to hear your opinions. Alright y'all, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day and happy coding.